Hey everyone, welcome back to the 9 Arts podcast. We are here today for our final episode of the season. And before we jump in, just want to give you a quick reminder about our state of the art report, where we bring heart and soul to the data that we found in that report. You can check that out at 9arts.com. Our final episode of the season today is Dana Crawford, pioneering preservationist and the president of Urban Neighborhoods, Inc. Dana pioneered the redevelopment of Denver's historic Larimer Square in the mid-1960s, creating a festival shopping area from the neglected and abandoned buildings of Denver's original Main Street. Today, Larimer Square serves as a prototype for the revitalization of forgotten main streets and architectural landmarks throughout the country. She was inducted into the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame, has won numerous Lifetime Achievement Awards, and in 2013, the hotel at the Restoration Project of Union Station was renamed as the Crawford Hotel in honor of her contributions to preserve the history of Denver. Dana Crawford is a legend in bringing cultural stories to life, and I am thrilled to share her story with you today. I hope this series has been a wonderful way to bring the impact of art to life through real-world stories and experiences of the people who create our built environment. Stay tuned, and we look forward to continuing this journey with you in our next season. Enjoy the show and see you soon. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I am thrilled to have with us pioneering preservationist Dana Crawford, the president of Urban Neighborhoods, Inc. Dana, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
So, Dana has developed and created some of the most exquisite places in Colorado and beyond. And so I'm really excited to hear her perspective. My first question for you today, Dana, is how do you go about developing a place? And could you give us a couple of examples of places and projects you've created that you think are exceptionally memorable?
Well, that's a sweeping question. But generally, projects like the Denver Union Station just cry out that they want to remain and they do not wish to be hit by the wrecker's ball. And they want to serve on a 21st and hopefully 22nd century basis. And in other words, they'd be here to stay. Nothing here, I don't think, is here in perpetuity, but for a long time and serve. In the case of Larimer Square, I think it was much more of an individual decision on my part that we were in the process of demolishing a whole section of the community that told the story of its past. And at that time, Denver was a pretty new city, and nobody really gave much of a care. I guess I can say care. Um, it was slated for urban renewal, and so it was slated for removal, like all those blocks in the urban renewal area. So the fact that I felt it was important to save that block just became an obsession to me. And then when I suggested it to a group of investors, they joined.
It takes quite a vision to be able to make a decision like that and to be so passionate and certain. How can you tell if a place is timeless, and how did you know that that was the right decision at the time?
Well, I didn't. I didn't know for sure. I knew that it was important not to just let this whole block after block after block be destroyed. To be a developer of any kind, you have to be willing to take a risk. And I think it was some other power, but I'm just in general a driven person. I mean, something comes along that's important. I think for the future, I I'm willing to take a risk.
Are there qualities or things that you look for in what creates a great city or a great place?
Well, architecture, of course, is one of the more important things. I remember a committee of the mayors not long ago was charged with the responsibility talking about the future of cultural development in the community. And it happened to be a time when the American Institute of Architects were having their nationwide meeting here. And that this, I just sat quietly, and they went through the whole list, and they didn't mention a thing about the built environment or architecture as being an important art form. And I was really almost speechless, but I finally croaked out, "Why didn't you mention architecture as an art form?" And they said, "Oh, we just don't think of it as that." And yet, it's probably the most persuasive community expression for people who come to visit a place, if they can look at the city and realize that art and architecture and placemaking are all important.
How do you think people saw it or people were thinking of architecture at the time?
Not
Well, I can see there that was a big hill to climb.
well. I mean, it was astonishing. I think, but it's still being astonishing. But I think it's really still the truth. I mean, if you look out from my loft, and you'll see a new city has emerged in the last 2 decades here. I've lived here for more than 21 years. And there was nothing out there except just land where air, the rail lines have been pulled up. And this has emerged. And so you have to look at it and you have to say, well, it's interesting. There isn't a lot of what would be described as great architecture. And there are many missed opportunities there in terms of the public realm. People don't think about the public realm, but it's how you feel when you're in a place.
Right. Absolutely. Is there anything that has surprised you in the decades that you've been in real estate? Things that were unexpected and a surprise in either a positive or negative direction?
Well, I guess first of all, I didn't have any background in real estate when I got into my obsession. And I think I was surprised to learn how complicated development was, how demanding it was, how full of disappointments it was, how impossible it was to get financing at the time. In the middle 60s, the whole idea was, let's tear it down and build, in my mind, concrete monsters that we're now dealing with. And they are very unfriendly places, and didn't work when they were built, and still refuse to work.
You've been an inspiration for so many people, Dana.
Well, that's another subject.
What do you think is the key to your success?
Well, I mean, I jokingly say I drink too much.
That helps you get through the challenging
Yeah,
times.
right. But, human beings are tribal, and they like to have gathering places, and they like to gather where they feel good, and they feel good where it's beautiful. So that's where the art comes in, of course, as you know.
So, how do you integrate art and culture into the vision of a place when you're at the early stages? When do you start thinking about it and how do you bring it to life?
Well, because you've worked with us through the years, you know that Walter Eisenberg and I began thinking about the art at the beginning, because beautiful places, beautiful buildings call out for anything that you add to be very attractive, um, would not in any way detract from, I always say when we're doing one of these projects that every direction that you look should be beautiful. and everything in your view should be beautiful. And people have an inherent, it has to do really, it's reflected in merchandising and car design and in everything, but an inherent desire for beautiful art, um, and colorful art. And it's very interesting to observe the adjustment to contemporary art, as you know.
So, do you think about the impact of community and storytelling and how art and culture not only impacts the people who might be viewing the space, but also the neighborhood around it? How does that come into your thinking?
Well, it's contagious. Um, so, I love to watch people walk through the Denver Union Station because you can almost tell immediately somebody who's never been in a station like that, or in Denver for that matter, and they'll come in, and especially when we have an event going on, and we have people dancing with earplugs, and somebody's dancing the foxtrot, and somebody's, doing another kind of dancing, and here you walk, you just get off the train and you walk in, and what's going on? And then you start looking around, and you say, what's going on? And then you walk through, and I always say, if you're with somebody that you love, why you take a little kiss right in the middle of it because you're so happy. And then you walk through and you walk out onto the plaza and you look at a city where the whole set of blocks has been saved, and then beyond that is a contemporary city, and you think, wow, this must be a place where people care.
I've never heard someone say that so in such a succinct way. This must be a place where people care.
Yeah,
You can really feel that when every detail is thought through
yeah.
in the way
Well,
that you do.
and even when some of the details, which are always missed, are missed. I mean, nothing's perfect, but and I always say you have to have something that the press can complain about, or it isn't really a real place. But it's fun. I'm working in Trinidad, Colorado now, and it's just one of those places. I mean, the whole little town just wants has it's been benefited by the fact that it's been poverty stricken, so not very much has been torn down, and so now we're able to just work on a number of fabulous buildings because the town benefited from a couple of brothers who were stunningly great architects, and they built lots and lots of buildings, and they've been respected, maybe inherently. So it's interesting.
Hi, Kitty.
Hi, Kitty. You want to be in the show? Yeah, do you want to be in it? Sometimes she walks right through. Everybody just loves it.
Who doesn't love a good cat video?
Yeah,
I mean, I think this is going to go viral now.
yeah, yeah. Hi, Millie.
Are there any trends that you're seeing in real estate today, things that you think are uh, positive changes for the industry?
Well, one of the things that's happening is I think people are understanding the power of placemaking better. Um, but understanding what makes a place appealing is another question. There was a book that was written by a designer, a famous designer who was very involved with Herman Miller stuff, and it's How to See in the late '60s. And he used to come to Aspen, and Aspen had a design conference that was just fabulous. Um, and it was before kind of the phrase placemaking came into being, but design, the power of good design is it's just compelling, and and it's really, really a pleasure to be able to work in that field, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you find that working with artists or working with art and culture is one of the more creative aspects of your job?
Well, truly, a lot of times artists are not properly rewarded for what they do.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that's fun about the Meow Wolf project, because artists have found out that kind of if they move a little bit more toward the mainstream, um, that they can make a living, and sometimes a good living. Um, so that's hopeful because it just always has irritated me so much that artists have a tendency to gravitate to a, a kind of a poorer neighborhood, and then they move in and they make it fashionable, and then of course they get priced out. So we have a project in Trinidad, Colorado, that's a beautiful old school, and it's on the National Register of Historic Places, and it obviously was a, a great building that was done by the Rat Brothers, and we're moving artists in, and we're working it out so that their rent can accrue toward an ultimate purchase.
Fantastic.
And so, I'm really hopeful about that, and it's been greeted with enthusiasm. So it's an experiment, but that's part of discovery, and experimentation is part of the whole thing about placemaking.
It's a long term
Yeah,
wealth creation strategy.
yeah. And so what you all do at Nine Dot Arts is so much a part of the whole picture, and it doesn't really require a huge budget. I think of some of the new homes I go into, even the show homes that are supposed to be examples of what's supposed to happen, and and I actually find myself wondering how much work it took to do something so horrible. I mean, almost everything in the place. I mean, the carpets, the little ceramic sculptures, the prints, everything is pastel on pastel on pastel and blah blah. And you just can't believe that people do something that's so terrible.
Someone had to make all of those decisions, and that took work.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, what are you excited about that you're working on right now? You mentioned Trinidad. I understand that you have some exciting work happening at the Argo. Do you want to tell anyone about those projects?
Well, the Argo, of course, I think all of us that have gone up the highway and have looked at that big red building on the side of the mountain and that said Argo, have wondered what that was. So when I got a phone call from an acquaintance of mine she said, "We're looking at a Superfund site, Dana. Will you come up?" And I said, "Well, I haven't been very interested in Idaho Springs, um, but I've driven by that building, and so I'd like to come up and look at it." Well, I hadn't been there very long before they said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, I think this is a fabulous project, and I'm in."
Ah,
Uh, and so, but like everything else, we've been working on it for a long time, and the pandemic hasn't helped. But it's 27 acres, and it's the big old mill, which is in amazingly good condition with many, many of the old pieces of equipment. And, it's in the scheme of mankind, it's just, a few minutes ago. But, from our perspective, it's a long time ago. And it was part of Colorado's very strong industrial beginnings. And and it's on the side of a very steep hill, and an inn and a gondola that will go up to the top. And at the top, you have a view of the whole Front Range. Spectacular nature. Just there's nothing more beautiful than the really, really authentic thing. Um, and hey, don't you be doing that. That's not nice. No, it's not nice. Oh, I didn't mean to offend you, but um, and then on the other end of Idaho Springs, which is a small town, population 1,600, but it has three $5 million restaurants in it.
Wow.
And but there's an old school, and it's kind of built in the Bauhaus style, and so we're wanting to save that and make it part of the wellness movement, but also I think we want to try to for the Front Range involve an opportunity to people for people to understand that wellness and good design are related. And so, like if you had a very, very busy few weeks and then you wanted to get away, you could just slip up. It takes most of the time, it takes about 25 minutes to get there from the heart of Denver. And you could spend a few days just, you know, being in a wonderful natural atmosphere uh, and with really great food and good exercise and total relaxation, and you could return in just a few days quite renewed.
So COVID has shifted the ways that our society, I think, in a lot of ways, thinks about our lives, our environments. And one of the questions that I ask everyone is, from the past year and a half, have you learned anything that you are going to keep with you into the future, and what might you leave behind?
One of the things that I have learned is that these smaller towns, the rural towns, are really interesting to work in, quite different from the metropolitan areas, and they all share some common desires before and during the pandemic, I think, and certainly it'll be after. But they are worried about their towns, especially their downtowns, and they want something to be nice enough so that when their children leave, they'll want to come back occasionally. And that's one. I mean, it's universal in all these small towns. And then, and the other thing that's universal is they want to have a gathering place. And and of course, historically, the gathering places have been on plazas or parks downtown.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners today, Dana?
You should get a kitty.